that Kongdoo Monster will be persisting with Roach. No sign of Hippo. Roach's score, 5 games, 0-5. So probably not fair to level that all towards him, but he was crushed in lane like a bug by Antara in the previous game.
Yeah, rough matchup, rough day. Italy again the ban, of course, versus Crush. Coming through from CJ. Or are they going to ban the GP as well? There we go. No more Poppy for you, Antara. Fortunately for Kongdoo Monster, he's also pretty good at Fiora.
That's true. Fiora on the red side, potentially as a last pick, does loom. Kalista has to be banned on red, actually. No, Kramer's shown so much more proficiency on that. I have to feel like the previous game was a bit of a misstep. I think it's back to scaling. I think it's back to blue Ezreal for CJ Entus if I was a betting man.
You're not though, right?
Betting's illegal. Actually, not for me, us in Korea. We're okay. But
that's right, we could gamble. We're foreigners.
Yay! Great gambling.
One of the stranger aspects of being in Korea is if you have a foreign passport, you can actually go to the casinos. But if you have a Korean passport, you cannot.
Nope. Well, Corki looks like it's going to loom as another first pick. There's a couple of different bans here, though, so trying to take stock of anything interesting that made it through the draft. Mad Life can certainly pick up Alistair this time, as he is available.
I think you take GP Alley here. Why not? Grab it away from Roach. They banned it in the last game, so it's a pick that they have not wanted Roach to have. And Antara may get a chance to show his chops with another carry top laner.
Which one, though, Monty? They've been threatening top lane Quinn, of course. Kramer played it at the AD carry role, but what an evolution to go from seeming like a Maokai one trick to potentially a Quinn player over the course of one round robin, or one of the 2 round robins, half of this spring split. Gangplank is the higher priority champion. Again, it could be Antara, could be Sky, remains to be seen, and with Alistair available, we see another support picking up the Braum over Alistair. There was an interview last week where, I forget who it was, who was saying that they liked the Braum into Alistair matchup, so they're happy to just pick it first.
It's also, when you see that, Corky, and there's still, of course, Kog'Maw not banned this game. There are a bunch of Pope champions on the board.
Also, they have a very good Blue Ezreal player, and Blue Ezreal, of course, gets horribly denied by the Braum, so it's kind of a denies Ezreal pick from the Monster, and also will be a very likely pick for Kramer.
I think that coming in here with the Braum too, you deny a Poke composition that way. Obviously, Mad Life very good at the Braum pickup himself, and you can do some nice work zoning for your GP in some of these team fights. So I get it. We often see the Braum picked early when the Corki has been first picked, and the Quinn is taken away.
Now, CJ in a bit of a bind. We mentioned that Blue Ezreal's the likely pickup for Kramer, but if you go for Gangplank, and he's going to be heavily, if it is top lane Gangplank, we expect to be heavily harassed by, honestly, either Corki or Quinn. We expected this to be the solo laners from Monster, although one of them could be flexed to AD carry. And then if you take Blue Ezreal with his scaling time as well, you really do put yourself in a similar situation that Kongdoo found themselves in the last game, where if you pick enough losing lanes, the enemy gets going, you just kind of get run over. Kog'Maw made it through quite late in the draft, surprisingly.
That's another reason to take the Braum, of course. The long-time Kog'Maw Braum synergy is huge.
Go for the lane swap. You hit that first Q. People getting stunned very fast. Potentially some flashes being blown at level 1. Maybe not.
But they're going to go for the Lucian Braum instead. So very strong bully lane. Yes, that's what I want to see. The Kog'Maw locked in. Kog'Maw and, of course, the Rek'Sai. I think this really just minimizes Bubbling's downside as a jungler. At least he gets information via the Tremor Sense, not mechanically demanding, and able to peel. And that's kind of what they need.
The question remains, though, who's going to provide lane pressure? Because on paper, it's not Gangplank, it's not Kog'Maw. Is the Gangplank going top? And Tara's champion pool starts to suggest that, but then you're looking for Sky to be the one to apply lane pressure, and that's with Lulu off the board. So I'm actually really interested to see where CJ goes with this draft on their last pick. It's going to be the return of Varus, so we're expecting the Varus to be in mid lane.
Yeah, that would be quite surprising to have that again. I mean, Kongdoo is going to be in a similar situation with not the greatest wave clear in the top lane again, but some look at the scaling too from CJ here. They're definitely going to play this one late, and you called it, Papa Smith. You said these guys are going to go late this time around. I would much rather see the Victor than the LeBlanc here.
But yeah, Victor does strike me as the safer wave clear champion, but he doesn't apply a lot of lane pressure.
But here's the other factor. You also have the gravity field, which we're talking about GP and Kog'Maw creating those zones and team fights in the late game. He's just going to be way more useful than a LeBlanc.
I do not want to see the Zilean. That would be a problem. That would be very, very little lane pressure. This would be a pretty disrespectful lock-in to me if we do see the Zilean. This is telling me that CJ aren't really concerned with their opponents because theoretically they could lose every lane and the jungle matchup here.
Yeah, that's going to be rough. But if they do get into those late game team fights, it's going to be ridiculous.
Sure, but you never draft saying, well, if we make it to 35 minutes even, we'll be okay.
I believe the Kongdoo Monster did that last game, Papa Smithy.
Well, that went a little bit sideways, let's say.
Well, similar situation in this game, though. They still have to stack up that tier in mid, but they draft a strong poke composition, but they intentionally draft that poke composition into a Braum. I don't know about Kongdoo here. There are flaws, I think, with the draft on both sides in this one. As you say, picking a lot of losing lanes for CJ, but at the same time, picking a poke composition into Braum, not exactly the greatest either.
But Kongdoo Monster have a pressure comp and CJ have no wave clear, a little bit of wave clear, a tad of wave clear. Could you ask for any less wave clear?
One iota of wave clear, please. I do think that Victor was definitely the better choice here. But they're going to go for the Zilean, keep Kramer alive, and it's a pseudo Juggermaw, actually, with the Zilean speed boost onto the Cog.
But I don't know if Zilean is really the plug-and-play replacement for Lulu that Sky thinks it is. It's like, all right, it keeps him alive, it makes him faster, it's the same champion.
Basically.
Except the laning phase is so much worse.
Yeah. Rough times here. We'll see if CJ can pull this one out. The Zilean usually used for tower dive compositions with Poppy. That's how we've seen Energy and KT play it. Not typically used for kiting compositions like this one. We'll see how it goes. Game 2 right now.
We'll find you acting on your best behavior. Turn your back on mother.
Kongdoo versus CJ. Game number 2. CJ up 1-0 in this series. And having a pretty convincing game 1 at that. Untara delivering, and now we get to see his gangplank. I'm actually really excited about this.
It is an extension of that carry champion pool that he's developed. We've seen the startings of it with the Fiora, the Poppy, of course, on the tankier end of the spectrum, but certainly carried his team last game. And now, honestly, it's us to, as analysts, kind of scratch our heads and really work out what this draft has really brought both teams. I think there's answers on both sides. I think there's lack of synergy specifically on the side of CJ in terms of the early game. I just don't know how they're going to put all these factors together. It's also Cleanse Zilean in the mid lane, so the moment I had to say Cleanse Zilean out loud, I kind of grimaced. I saw you laughing. So.
Oh man, he's just, I mean, it's the same jungle mid matchup, so Sky really just doesn't want to get chain CC.
They're gonna meet here?
They are. They're actually gonna Cougar 6 on face check a brush that has Mad Life and Kramer in it. He is going to have to flash right here. Oh no. Does manage to get away, but that is a huge loss. Mad Life tags him with the ignite early.
Waiting for cooldowns.
And there we go. Soul has to walk out, so huge advantage from that face check. And we did see CJ right there anticipating an invade on a possible lane swap, and Cougar just walks straight into it, and oh man, they are going to have some issues. They have to be so careful. Soul gonna get stunned. Oh man, they took a beating just even trying to get into lane.
The craziest thing is that Kongdoo losing a flash there probably would have been a better case scenario because they lost the exhaust. Guga had no health. Soul had to skill up Valkyrie at level 1. They could never trade. It was a real scenario where you can't walk past Kramer and Mad Life to get into lane. And the result is they are way, way behind in experience.
They will clean up this wave, and Mad Life actually going to take this opportunity to get a quick recall in. See if he appears elsewhere on the map. Kramer falls back into his own jungle. And we are going to see those inverted lanes, your Australian meta, Papa Smithy. It's your favorite?
Bot lane and top, just the way I understand it. So we get to watch wave clear wars in mid. Kramer's AFK, he's had enough bathroom break, I guess.
Is gonna slash dance over here by the Krugs. Not wanting to be vulnerable right there. But this is another one of those factors that the weird lane swapping and the invades are having. CJ just called their bluff on trying to invade in the jungle to stop the lane swap if they saw Gangplank and the jungler there starting on the weak side if we hadn't had standard lanes, and that face check comes with a pretty dear price.
It was kind of a bizarre face check because Kongdoo walked over a ward that they'd potentially, they had 2 out of the 3 hits down on, so actually CJ had vision that they were coming in, and Kongdoo knew there was a ward there and still face checked the brush. They really had no business face checking.
Well, they have stabilized at least for now, Baba Smithy. It hasn't been that big of a deal. There wasn't any follow-up play with both junglers starting on the bottom side of the map early. And there wasn't a flash blown, so Mad Life basically just got a free recall, picks up a pink ward, didn't have a whole lot of gold at the time. They're basically just running with a biscuit advantage now for Kramer.
Watching the bot lane is the isolated lane matchup of Gangplank versus the Quinn. Of course, we've seen that to be very, very one-sided in the advantage of Quinn, so expecting pressure to be in bot, unless we do see Bubbling make a wraparound gank.
They know Crush is here, and so that's going to cause them to actually do a gank onto the bottom side. Roach is going to get popped up, and there's the flash follow. Vantara now underneath the turret. There's the tanking from Bubbling, and that's an easy first blood. Vantara manages to get a snack and live through the gank and the turret dive. So nice first blood there, and they saw Crush with a ward in the second brush of the lane, so CJ, with that information, commits to the bottom side gank, and Kramer and Mad Life just play it cool, and that means CJ with an early edge.
And Roach just was too far overextended. When you're trying to harass, when you know you have the laning counter pick, you feel pressured to deny CS, you end up pushing the wave. Smart pathing from Bubbling, but honestly, it all appeared a bit too easy for me for CJ to pull off what was an academic gank in the bot lane.
Bubbling now, taking a few of those little raptors, but not getting anything too substantive. Just been a farm fest here in mid.
Suits Zillion.
Zillion just fine.
Paris will take it, but Zillion definitely has the weaker of the 2 laning phases.
Tormented Soil and the Frostbomb going to do a lot to just push CJ in repeatedly in this top side in the early game. Now, Roach right back there. Antara comes back with the Sheen, though, with his first blood money. And now up in when it comes to CS, Antara going to get the vault in to trade.
Expect this to be where the minion wave is for the majority of the game. If the pink ward stays up, Roach has some safety. We do know that Rek'Sai can make some of the more creative jungle paths. Cleanse, useful that time.
Yep, gets out of the gank. Cocoon follow-up was imminent. Saw the Elise coming into the lane and just burns the summoner spell instead.
It's just strange to see 2 champions that honestly you only see against lanes where they feel like they can get a free lane. You know, Varus like, okay, I see Lulu, I can wave clear against this Lulu. And Zillion, you're only really picking when either your comp demands it or it is similarly a fairly low pressure mid laner, and the result, both of them are going to feel fine farming up. It's just that it feels like CJ are getting away with more with the brashness of this last pick Zillion.
Sky now. Taking a couple shots there, but he'll remain relatively safe, even low mana that he has. We should see what build he goes. Typically we've just been seeing the Rod of Ages for the Zillion, and not really building the tier here in Korea. The tier has not been the item of choice. There's a little too much scaling there.
With tier Catalyst, honestly, is like 2 players picking up tier, right? It's basically all in on scaling on one champion who's going to be effectively a complete afterthought for the majority of the early game. So it's too much of investment in Korea, where teams will see that and adjust their playstyle to try and punish you for going for stats that don't really impact combat whatsoever. Wave clear is the big problem for CJ, but if they scale up, if they can get to a team fighting phase and not have to worry about potential split pushes, the sort of pressure that CJ was putting on last game, then they'll be fine. It's again, can Kongdoo use that early window where CJ have Zillion for wave clear, and even then, not much else apart from that.
But the punishment just hasn't been there. I mean, that's the main issue. CJ, to this point, and certainly we haven't seen people going back to buy yet, really, either in the mid or the bottom lane. Or I should say duo lane in this case. to get that punishment down. Kongdoo Monster just letting everything go even, and now the GP being ahead caused some problems. Actually, that sneaked through the black shield right there.
The only indictment of the pressure advantage that Kongdoo have picked themselves into is Bubbling actually deep in enemy territory here.
Again, he's just been in that top side the whole game, and he'll grab another Gromp while he can. Mad Life and Orzillion now getting some deep boards in. This will mean Roach has a nice little bit of freedom to play a bit more aggressively.
Can't really play much more aggressively than he's played so far this game. Been punished for it once, but it's been almost completely under the enemy turret. I just feel like Kongdoo trying to fight on this side of the map where there's enough members for CJ to actually fight 5v5 is a mistake. Why don't they just take Dragon when they have so much pressure on the bottom lane, where in the mid lane they had a pink ward on the right side lane bush, so they had basically complete control of the bottom side of the map, and instead have more been dictated to by CJ's scaling comp than actually been making the necessary adjustments and aggression in the early game that their comp and laning phase really could have given them.
Yeah, I totally agree. Very surprising. And Bubbling has had so much freedom just to go into the enemy jungle. Now they take the blue buff away too.
But I mean, that's fine. He goes and takes the enemy blue buff. You take Dragon and
Yep.
the enemy blue buff yourself. That is what is afforded by how this early game has been played, at least in terms of where the lanes have been at. It's been the inaction, specifically through the jungle matchup, that's been the starkest difference between the teams.
Well, we're not really talking about world beater junglers in this game, Papa Smithy, it has to be said. Two of the weakest junglers in this league, for sure, in Bubbling and Crush.
Down there with Flawless, that's sad to say, but the reality. Could have been so good.
Oh, he's great mechanically. Maybe he'll get there someday.
He's great mechanically on Lee Sin.
Yes.
He's not great mechanically on Lee Sin.
Bubbling now and Crush going head-to-head. Which finds Bubbling and will force him back out of the jungle. A little bit risky there for Bubbling, honestly. Edge had a chance to perhaps pop his ultimate and deal a little bit more damage, maybe force a flash. But
let's talk about what Bubbling's been doing, Monty, because we talked about how he's been aggressively counter-jungling. With those losing matchups we're talking about, he's effectively one man creating map pressure that is lanes that the draft for CJ didn't offer. So Bubbling's impact is much more than the one assist he's got this game. Of course, he did get Huntara ahead and bot, but I think the bigger factor is that the rest of the lanes are very competitive in CS. The gold lead, it's 1,000, but not much more than that. And most of that has been Bubbling, creating map pressure on his own and not being punished for it, which is big for CJ Entus' draft.
Well, Soul now coming back over the mid lane here and moving up all the way across the map with that package. Bubbling has taken that Gromp so many times now.
It's Bubbling's Gromp.
It's Bubbling's Gromp. Soul and Crush heading up towards that top side. Kramer Mad Life will get a little bit of damage down onto the turret, but not a whole lot. Really willing to commit. Ginsu's Rage Blade now finished onto Kramer, so that's a nice power spike for him, while Soul's still working his way up to that Trinity Force.
Not going to be looking for any real trades in lane. Colmore getting an extended laning phase and going even is a big win for him. Navigated that awkward 1,000 gold recipe cost for the Rage Blade, has the item completed, so can actually trade pretty well if we do see Corki go aggressive. So a stalemate in top certainly suits CJ Entus.
Got that sweet, sweet AoE now. I think item is really disgusting with Runaan's Hurricane with Kog'Maw's attack speed in terms of the AoE damage that you end up dealing on that champion.
It's such a unique item for Kog'Maw because any other range champion's really punished for having to stack up those 8 attacks, but when you've got 5 attack speed potentially...
But it's actually, you get 2 stacks per attack.
No, only on melee champions, range champions.
Oh yeah, that's right, that's right.
But then again, if all your attacks are kind of double because you have double attack speed, it's basically the same. So that's why it's a Kog'Maw special.
Fun item. It's nice to see some different itemizations on certain AD carries. And Mad Life now going to go in. Ooh, misses that Glacial Fissure, but the GP ult, that's going to find the mark here on Googer, forcing that flash. Kramer going to move forward, but they actually disengage it. In the end, Googer with the burn from the Ignite. And they trade 2 summoners for 3 right there.
Kongdoo really are desperate to pick up this Dragon. Crush can see there's no chance of CJ having any presence on the bottom lane. Turret dive, stealing Dragon, that's what needs to happen for Kongdoo Monster.
Crush is going to tag Huntara with the Cocoon. However, of course, with GP, that's going to do very little, and they're just going to try and trade turrets in the end. Maybe they can eventually go for this dragon afterwards.
It was crying out to be taken 5-6 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It's going to be late at the best of things from a Kongdoo perspective. And they just don't seem decisive around it. It's just going to be a recall from Crush. I am perplexed as to the complete
Especially
inaction.
with Elise, where you can tank this dragon with the Spiderlings with Quinn. Cougar now going very far forward, and they actually get the ultimate out of him. That will not get the shackle at the end. Bubbling is back to his favorite Grom.
It's one of those things where, to illustrate it, you just put all the factors together. Varus, line wave clear, Zilean takes longer, so Varus should have lane pressure in mid. They had pink wards around the mid. We already know, of course, Quinn had Gangplank pushed up the majority of that laning phase, and as you mentioned, it's Elise who can almost solo it, or just with a gust of wind from someone else, and then talk about the enemy team. Bubbling's literally spent the whole map stealing Grom,
And they know where he is.
Exactly, he's been doing it in the face of the top lane most of the time. Roach gets Untara very, very low. It's just, you put two of those factors together, that's enough for some teams to make the aggressive dragon call. When you add the 5 or so, the litany of factors, and they still don't have it, that's where the misstep is a bit too stark from Kongdoo Monster.
Yeah, and with that first blood gold too, CJ is actually taking a lead here with their mega scaling.
And they swap back, and suddenly, Dragon's really hard to pick up.
Yeah, no longer really on the table for them, unless they can engineer some kills on this bottom side, but they've got some good wards there to watch their backsides, and CJ just not going to play this too aggressively. It's been easy, and there have been a lot of missed objective opportunities so far in this series tonight, Baba.
If you take anything away from this series, oh, Roach going low.
And trying to go for the all-in right now. Bubbling actually going to come from behind. Crush is there to answer, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. Bubbling actually going to take low. Edge is got there into the lane. Sky is, what is he doing right now? It's actually just going to ult Untara, but that was it was like standing there for a second doing nothing. And that's going to be 2 kills, actually, as Edge just gets out of that lane faster and makes his presence known at the top side of the river.
And 6 times the charm for Roach on these carry champions. Actually played that engagement smartly, re-engaged with the flash, and the Volt picked up the first kill. They waited out the Zilean ultimate timer from Sky. Not convincing Zilean play, you'd have to say.
Let's check and see what happened right there. I mean, looks good at first, but then Edge just gets there, has that heal.
The Sky flashes to get the ult onto Bubbling, and
He
then
waited so long to get those bombs out. Maybe he didn't have a cooldown up.
I don't know what he would have been using bomb on before he reacted to that engage, because Varus was the first one to get there. Maybe he was trying to wave clear, I guess.
You have to land the stun in that situation.
You have to imagine, maybe he double bombed mid to punish the roam from Varus and then showed up with nothing.
I think that may be it.
No rewind, only a single bomb and flash ult coming out from that fight, so Sky caught with his pants down, you have to say, on Zilean.
Now Untara had that early edge. Will be facing a much tougher time now as Quinn starts to stack more and more attack damage. Goes for the Ninja Tabby. Trade just a little bit, but it's still going to be really difficult.
Roach doesn't have anywhere near the lead he might have had if that successful gank hadn't been pulled off by Bubbling early in the game. The pressure didn't lead to a dragon, so in general, Untara's split lane against a Quinn is Gangplank. And anyone can tell you that's played that top lane matchup, that's a win for CJ.
All right, CJ. They are going to be the winners of the first dragon of the game, in spite of the opportunities that Kongdoo may have had to take it just a little bit earlier. But Kongdoo, this is where they need to shine. They need to start punishing this GP. They've got that Corki with that Trinity Force. Of course, the tier's still stacking up in the mid lane. Double Ghost Blade, though, they will do a lot of damage in those short little windows on the item active. So the 4-1 split has to start now, Baba Smithy. They need to push out this bottom and really get into the mid lane.
Good pathing from Bubbling, though. He knows he needs to relieve pressure on this Gangplank. At least hasn't moved, so it's going to be a face check we're expecting. Do not know that Crush is here. Actually, they might do.
They saw with the sweeping lens.
With the sweeping lens, you're right.
Just tagged him at the edge of that Tri-Brush. So they got to, this is the right play, though. Get everybody into the mid lane right now. Corki is here. And Sky have to do some work to clear this out.
No more wave clear.
Oh, really, Papa Smithy?
My apologies. The ultimate wave clear.
That was perfect.
Short cooldown ult right there.
I loved it. Utara in trouble now. Crush going to use this opportunity of no ult to just destroy him.
Nice ult, Untara. He sure showed me.
It was a good play on the map, though.
Yeah.
Just changing the pressure point immediately to take advantage of the lost cannon barrage.
Maybe a single turret. Might even be answered here. CJ 3 men strong on the bot side.
Still, good kill, good turret pressure here from Kongdoo Monster, and they take a lead now in this game, surprisingly enough, but they're going to need a lot more than that to slow CJ down if they want to fight around this dragon or this Baron in the mid game.
Let's return to how important this first dragon is for CJ. You look at their comp, and you talked about the Zillion Poppy synergy that, of course, we're not seeing in this game. The thing about Zillion is that he really helps engage, but there isn't any engage on CJ at all. Unless we're talking about throwing the speed boost onto Bubbling and having him just run into people with the Unburrow. They don't really have engage, so their only way to fight with this comp is to kite backwards.
Yep.
And the only way you're kiting backwards in any kind of a preferential sense for CJ isn't around an objective. So if that's 3rd dragon, if that's 5th dragon, if that's Baron, okay, that's good for CJ. But picking losing lanes and a team that has to kite backwards should be the easiest thing in the world to punish.
Well, it's also, Kongdoo Monster has really opted for a 4-1 split push composition here, so without the engage from CJ, if Kongdoo just sets up in the lanes, there's really not a lot of ways that CJ is going to be able to stop them, save like a cannon barrage initiation into some sort of Braum or Rek'Sai follow-up, but that is a really unreliable way to engage and definitely not ideal for CJ.
I mean, triple AD carry reigns on a turret, you double bomb, and then you don't have any wave clear apart from maybe Cogmore walking up. If Baron's there, the double bomb doesn't clear waves, and then you're kind of screwed if you're CJ. So, look to see if Kongdoo can translate specifically this top lane pressure into some Baron pressure in the next 5-10 minutes.
I mean, realistically, though, neither of these teams have engaged.
Nope. But
it's
when you have
all
3
about
AD carries, you've certainly got turret.
Yes, yes you do. Only have that siege potential. Bomb will go ahead and clear out that minion wave. Kramer has his Hurricane, so that's going to be great for actually clearing waves. Hurricane and the Ginsu's Rage Blade will make short work of a siege.
Question is, how much harass or how much threat is he under when he's standing in one spot to do that wave clearing, about 700 units away? Again, it is a fairly low engage comp from Kongdoo, but he can still make things happen. Varus can still take out half your health with a couple of Qs. Not Bubbling himself, though. He's tanking.
He is going to be just fine. CJ just playing the waiting game, playing the farming game right now.
Kongdoo's playing ARAM.
Yes, they are. It's all about the ARAM in the mid lane, and Roach doing enough work on this bottom side. But bombs have been mostly effective. See if this is a push that can actually do anything. They are on the cannon wave edge. It just gets caught out at the front line. Oh man, it looks like he got hit by bombs. I think he just got double bombed right there and died.
See the replay, but it looks likely. No cleanse this game. He's got the heal, so no answer to the double bomb.
Could have been Mad Life and Kog'Maw too, comboing for a stun. We didn't get to see the start of that. But Mad Life landed the Winter's Bite, and then Kramer just tapped his W. That also could have set it up, but man, that was a huge positional error, and they lost so much pressure as a result of that. It's going to take them several minutes to reset up now.
See the replay here.
How did he die?
Double bomb.
Oh my, that is so sloppy.
Double bomb and turret Hecro.
Oh, that is ugly, Papa Smithy.
That was not good. That's probably not going to be in a replay.
You mean, oh, it'll be in a replay. It's not a highlight reel.
No, not a highlight reel.
Send that one straight to the low light reel.
You're right. You just see the flow and effect in other lanes. You see Gangplank pushing out a little bit in top. You see Corki getting pushed out in bottom lane. Suddenly, what was looking like an inevitable siege of this mid lane turret, it's pretty healthy. It's at about 70% health. And
man, that bought so much time for CJ. Ridiculous. So now Kongdoo going to be looking at this dragon as an alternative.
Are you sure they're looking at the dragon?
No. I'm not sure.
That's concerning. We've talked about the Dragon threat from Kongdoo, but it seems like they are the ones that are threatened by the Dragon.
I don't blame them. Dragons are scary.
This Dragon, though, it dies like on average 3 to 4 times a game.
And Baron is also really not that scary in League of Legends. These legendary monsters really are quite pathetic when it comes down to it. Uh-oh, Roach has to flash. Flash follow here by Bubbling. Roach on the run, and there's the flash Q. Untara gets the headshot onto Roach, and another kill for Gangplank. That's going to be quite nice. Has the distortion boots, it's interestingly enough, that early in the game. And CJ somehow making cross-map plays right now. They should not be allowed to do this.
Well, the big question is, why is Roach pushed into the enemy in a turret with literally no vision on that side of the map at all? No idea of where anyone was. Didn't even seem to strategically be using his W for extra vision and was thusly punished.
Now, they're not going to go after this Dragon with the TP and the Gangplank ultimate still available from Untara, and that means that CJ, it's a nice little opportunity here to push in. Bubbling finds Soul and clears out some wards. So the grouping now beginning once again for Kongdoo Monster. They're resetting. Another attempt possible here onto this turret.
Siege is still very, very powerful. They don't get caught out by the double bomb like last time.
Oh wow, Bubbling just gets chain CC'd to death under the turret. Mad Life, the next target, nice kill. The bindings from Guger finding their mark, and that's 2 kills under the turret. This may be the edge they need to take this mid lane turret and then transition into a Dragon. Double bombs are there, but they just gotta hit the front line of minions, and that's going to be it. No more mid lane turret here. Nice little push there from Kongdoo Monster as they just get all their crowd control together to take the couple kills.
All they need is that second Dragon buff. It's a crazy thing to say out loud given what the Dragon buff used to represent, but second Dragon, you saw their siege is incredibly strong. Once they pick up that second Dragon buff, they'll have even more turret threat, and these turrets, both in the side lanes and on the focus fire, will be going down with consummate ease. That is a preview. That is exactly what Kongdoo Monsters needs to do. The 4-1 split. And the 4-1 split, just look at this pressure. Bubbling tries to base tank damage. The consistent damage is insane.
You just can't do that. They're going to keep tossing out cocoons and bindings, and then the follow-up with the Chain of Corruption makes it so easy to hit that ultimate. Really cocky there from Bubbling to get in the front line, overestimating his tankiness, but he is just burned to a crisp. And that means an objective, or 2 actually, with the Dragon, of course, goes over to Kongdoo. So got a nice little 2K gold nest egg right now to keep pushing forward. They've taken out the outer ring of turrets, just 1 turret so far for CJ.
While Kongdoo don't have true engage, it's in those scenarios where everyone's fighting to get in position to clear some minion waves on the side of CJ that those dark bindings are the initiation that is needed. The focus fire, when you can turn attention from 380 carries onto 1 tank. No one's a tank, you die almost instantly. Maybe if Sky's in position, you get away with that, but without fail, you keep chucking down the siege, you keep approaching it that way from Kongdoo, you will find objectives with that build. As speaking of builds,
the Duskblade has come for this Quinn. I don't know about that. We were talking a lot about it yesterday. Not convinced that is actually a good item.
See, the thing about the item, Monty, is that certainly the passive is overrated. It was one of those things where you conceptualize it like amazing, then you realize, okay, it's not an active, it's not as powerful. What it builds out of and what stats it gives you, 75 raw AD, movement speed and 10 armor penetration are very strong. So sure, you can maybe not get the most out of the passive. Of course, when you're Quinn, if you catch someone unawares, you know, you just tag them with the Vault, maybe you can get a nice damage trade in, but it's more about the raw stats than necessarily the passive.
Kramer actually just getting a flash on right here. Nice pick. Guger makes the play. A Cathian surprise. Actually, not going to finish him off. They tried with the Gangplank ultimate. Bit of a waste right there. That's just not going to do a whole lot. He had the Crucible, so he's able just to heal himself.
Speaking of lack of wards, that time CJ didn't have any. Kramer caught trying to wave clear. They don't have a minion wave, so they haven't punished with an objective just yet, have Kongdoo, but now we're seeing the 3-1-1 split as, pushing with 80 carries in every lane.
Interesting that we see the Blade of the Ruined King come out onto Kramer. Considering there isn't a true tank on Kongdoo, I would have thought the Bloodthirster would be a little bit better in terms of sustain here.
Big issue with Bloodthirster is you get such diminishing returns with physical damage on Kog'Maw's W that Blade, the fact that you get the full on-hit effect and of course all your bolts proc it as well makes it much more desirable. I agree in that it's less optimal in terms of, you know, usually conceptualize Blade after the nerfs as being purely against melee assassins that you want to slow, but I think just given Kog'Maw's kit, Blade is still the preferential choice.
I don't know, I think against these low HP targets and then also having, of course, the overshield against the poke might be useful. It's a tough call, but yes, having the on-hit from the Hurricane Bolts is definitely a big bonus.
Kongdoo have certainly been playing it smarter in the last few minutes. The item buys have been interesting, you already mentioned what Quinn has going on. Mikhail's actually been picked up by Morgana. They don't want any more double bombs, stuns onto Edge, I guess. Doesn't found room for a QSS himself just yet.
Yeah, even the Veil there from Crush are very much prepared for CJ. And how does CJ play this one out? They've been stalled out on their dragon stacking. They have to hope that Kongdoo is going to try and initiate into them, because Kongdoo has every opportunity just to run them around the map right now, set up these sieges. Kramer on the front line just gets instantly nearly destroyed there. Kramer has the Zillion ult on him, but he's going to time out, and now Kongdoo, this is their chance to re-engage. Lots of flashes used just to escape right here. Untara targeted by Roach on the flank. Maybe a bit of a mistake. Untara just going to try and group up here and clear out some waves, but Kramer way too cocky in that front line.
It's really been impressive to see Kongdoo play around the Zillion. We talked about Zillion as a potential plug-and-play replacement for the Lulu.
They're going to go in. Bubbling actually going to flash for that. Does get the one kill. Untara trying to follow it up with some barrels, and he's going to get some damage down onto Crush right now. Soul trying to get away, flashes out of a double barrel explosion, but they split push. No one is here to answer the Quinn, so Roach will take the 5th tower of the game for Kongdoo and start to extend that gold lead even further.
I want to come back to the Zillion. The big factor is when you've got Kog'Maw on the front line with a Lulu, you speed him up, you give him the permanent health, potential slowing field. It makes sense for Kog'Maw to be in the front. When it's Zillion, where you have that 5-second window of him being able to be rezzed, we've seen Kongdoo already in multiple fights to stop targeting the member that has that Zillion ult, and you just can't play the fights as well. It's much easier to play around Zillion's impact on a Kog'Maw than there is to play around Lulu and what she provides to a Kog'Maw.
Yeah, it's infinitely easier.
Unless you're ulting super late, and then you just run the risk of the Kog'Maw dying in the front. Your only real hopes of winning a team fight going with it.
Kog'Maw reviving on the front line too, not exactly terribly useful. Sky actually, I keep saying, seeing that as Shy, of course, with CJ, but Sky opting for the death cap in this game, so the flat AP, and they don't have an answer to this. Untara is here, they want this dragon, but Kongdoo can afford to give it up. They don't really care as long as they can delay enough recalls. Actually, they're not going to push forward onto this. There is a chance right there for Quinn to get some autos in for sure.
Also could have looked to Baron. There is a blue trinket ward on it, but Kongdoo just going to set up in mid instead.
I certainly don't think you attempt a Baron right now. Your threat of a gangplank, getting those barrels into the pit, that would be, I think, quite deadly when Kongdoo is so well equipped to siege these turrets, and CJ, with their lack of engage, not really able to force a team fight.
Just realized there's 5 ranged auto attackers on the side of Kongdoo monsters, so once again, they've certainly picked to spend their time almost completely under these enemy structures. Second Dragon buff is going to do a lot of work when they finally get it. If they keep up this pressure, it's going to be hard to see CJ opting into too many more even Dragon fights like the last 2 have been.
Just remember that Victor could have been picked in this game, Papa Smithy. Got that in your head?
We got Zillion instead.
Hopefully, seeing if he might be able to put together a flank, but the wards certainly there for Kongdoo, so they have no trouble just backing off instantly. Frostqueen Claim is now done for Cougar, and that's just going to be even more annoying when it comes to these defenses. You can set up the slow and then all of those chain CCs afterwards, and here's the engage now.
Turbo Rek'Sai.
The GP ultimate, but that's not going to be fruitful for them. Bubbling getting quite low, and that's the only form of engage they have right there. That's it.
That was literally Turbo Rek'Sai. They put the Zillion time speed up onto Rek'Sai and hoped for the best. Didn't work. You just come back to that Victor pick. If you pick in Victor, suddenly you can't do these sieges with anywhere near the same reliability. The only way to stop Victor's wave is to opt into a Baron, and suddenly CJ get the fight they're looking for. Without that option, with the lack of reliable wave clear from the Zillion, things are so much more potent from the side of Kongdoo than they would be in the case of Victor.
Yeah, they just don't have to care about Zillion. They can just continue to pick off whomever they like or get the poke damage down to take the turrets. The Zillion ultimate may never really have an effective use in this game whatsoever.
The difference between a carry with 200 HP and a carry that's dead, when we're talking about the Zillion ult, is nothing. They're out of the fight at that point. They have to run away. They don't want to die on the front line, or if it's the last few seconds of the Zillion ult, they just have to get out of the fight. Death is the strongest CC, but if you have to exit the fight anyway, the result is the same, and that's why the Zillion really isn't contributing too much. If it's an initiator in the front line who has consistent CC like a Poppy that can set up for strong initiation, absolutely Zillion can do a lot of work. But when it comes to Juggermore-esque comps, we're seeing the other side of Zillion.
Yeah, and CJ too with his composition, they can't even rush the Baron. They would take way too much damage.
Rek'Sai's getting to the point where she can be close to a solo tank. But I do follow what you're saying. Again, at 40 minutes or 45 minutes, Braum and Rek'Sai can do a pretty solid 2-tank job.
We've got to start making or thinking about some desperate plays at this stage. The amount that they are falling behind. Certainly have the late game damage. Oh man, if Kramer catches him out, and oh, Kramer, gotta get the ult on him from Zillion. They're gonna try and finish this one off. He will get revived, and there's the bind taken by Mad Life. So they don't get the follow, but Kramer may have found actually a nice little timing there. Had to use both of his summoners to chunk them out, and now the time, I think, for this Baron bait has arrived.
Barrett still respawn, coming back to base, sorry, still recalling. We'll be there soon. Kongdoo's actually making the force in mid, but it seems to be just
wow, they got nothing out of that either. Every time CJ tries to engage, they just can't do anything. They can't finish off a kill. They can't transform it into another objective because they simply don't have the engage to lock anything down. Kramer tries to make a pick basically by himself.
Say basically, he flashed aggressively and healed to get in range, still didn't pick up the kill. The more Malmortius being completed means it will be a struggle for Kramer to pick off Varus in that situation. Kongdoo are going to keep the pressure up, but once we get to the 40-minute mark, misposition around one of these objectives. It's their play around Baron and Dragon that will really decide this game, because it's pretty binary playing this poke comp against no engage under a turret.
And here we go again, the focus fire, the chrono shift will save Bubbling. And he's going to get out in the end, sped up and tunneling through.
The play around objectives needs that finer touch that in large swaths has not been there for Kongdoo Monster during the course of this season.
Taking a look at this right now. Don't do it, Kongdoo. It's a trap. Only 3 of them here. Corki taking their red buff and decide to make a play onto the Krugs instead and continue to defend their wards. So blackout right now. There's only a trinket ward right now on the Baron, and as scary as Kramer is, he actually does have to get in range to do some of this damage. It is getting easier though. Of course, with the range increase to his W as he adds those levels on, but he's nearly max right now.
No summoner spells though means that
rough.
Doesn't want to opt into a fight for the next 2.5 minutes, so should be more pressure from Kongdoo in that time.
CJ just really can't do anything with this draft, unfortunately. And they knew the possibility of this poke comp was coming, that they took the Braum early on after they saw the Corki. But you gotta have some wave clear or some engage in there, otherwise this is going to happen to you. They're gonna GP ult engage again, that's all they got. They do force out an ult and a flash from the other side. Seems like every time, though, they get something, but it's just never enough to justify the ults blown from CJ's side.
Kongdoo's lack of decision means that they haven't got a second dragon either. It feels like Kongdoo have kind of got the minimum with the map pressure they've had for now 38 minutes. So again, the worry is that you go long enough, one team fight will decide this game. And Kongdoo have to even back away from a second dragon.
Trying to team fight against a late game Kog'Maw and GP with a revive could be not in the best interests of Kongdoo Monster. And here we go, Dragon going to be the attempt right here, and they're going to fade back into their vision around Baron. This is the right call. Just leave Kramer here. He's going to heal up a little bit. And
starting
this Kongdoo needs to turn. They actually should not keep doing this Baron right now. GP ult is down, and they're going to go in and try and get it. That's going to be a secure actually for Kongdoo. CJ just not there, and they kill Rek'Sai too. So very curious. CJ just delayed, not wanting to walk into that Baron, and they are able to take out Bubbling. And now the split push coming in the top lane from Roach.
Got a lot of physical damage with those stats from the Dustbringer and everything else, so back away as the Bloodthirster now as well. So much flat attack damage. Will he break the turret though? He's going to face tank it for a bit.
Everybody just actually falling back now on the side of CJ. Bubbling still at 22 seconds, and this is really odd. Just no contest at that Baron from CJ Entus, and they're not even really defending their turrets right now.
I don't know if we'll get a replay of the Baron, but there was such indecision. They spotted that it was at 4,000 health, milled around, went for a 50-50 smite steal, but there was no team cohesion in their plan around Baron, and they basically gifted over to Kongdoo.
And there's the GP ult right as it comes up again. Kramer exhausted on that front line by Cougar. Just easy kiting. There just isn't a way for CJ to take these fights.
Is it really kiting when you just run away and the enemy team has no CC or initiate?
I mean, technically, yes. It's not very exciting kiting.
No.
I know you like to excite with your kites, but it's not gonna be happening this game. It's about as easy as Kongdoo could want it.
Well, not much to say about this game, Monte Cristo. The Zilean pick is a real head scratcher. CJ just need Kongdoo to overcommit to a fight. That's their only way of winning a fight, is one that Kongdoo decide they want to engage themselves.
And Kongdoo, to their credit, just hasn't been doing that. They've actually played relatively methodically when it comes to these objectives. Even that Baron, they were ready to turn. But CJ was the one who really wasn't pressing actively enough into the Baron pit. That was the fight CJ had to take. Because now that the Baron is over on Kongdoo, it's so unlikely that they will be able to win this game.
Talked about a potential late game fight, one mistake and CJ winning despite their lack of pressure. That was the one fight they needed to take, and they weren't decisive on it.
They had to take that one.
That's the other side of the coin, is that they had to take that one, didn't. That shot calling mistake or indecision leads to basically the world's ultimate lose-lose situation. There's nothing they can do in this scenario.
Yep. Besides, slowly bleed out to the poke. The Tara right there, those barrels are simply removed before they become too much of a threat. These bombs are doing absolutely nothing.
Cannon minions, real MVP, picking up the consistent damage. There it goes. 2 inhibitors down. Sorry, 3, my apologies.
All 3 down, Papa Smithy. Baron buff now on the super minions as they close into the Nexus turrets, and Kongdoo Monster smartly not taking the fights, just avoiding them. And here's the last hurrah here. Soul actually gets caught on the front line. Kramer gonna flash forward. That is bold, but they get the kill from Kog'Maw, but that's it. And they still have to deal with 3 inhibs down at the end of the day, and they use so much of that. Kramer has had to flash forward every time just to deal damage. I mean, he has to. He has no other choice.
And that's Kramer with a level 18 Zilean in his back pocket, still doesn't have enough speed to get enough shots onto these enemies. Of course, attack moving as Kog'Maw, when you're talking about 3, 4, 5 attack speed, is almost impossible unless scripting, and no scripting here.
Made sure that there wouldn't be any scripting. Kramer, probably the only person able to clear these super minion waves on his team right now. Any efficiency. Bubbling is struggling with 1 in the top side. Now he's got 2 more friends to help out.
Not even any space to build up some Dead Man's Plate extra damage, so just a tanky Rek'Sai. No damage needed. No damage available.
Or no damage available, Papa Smith.
That's fair.
You can definitely use some damage right now.
Well, she's not going to get any. Maybe Spirit Visage next, at least according to what is in the items of bubbling.
Baron buff is off, however. It's the one bright spot here as Zentara takes over for super minion killing duty from bubbling, but they have all those 3 waves just on the doorstep of CJ Entus' base, and should be an easy finish here for Kongdoo Monster.
Easiest way to finish, bring in all 3 super minion waves at the same time and go for turret damage. The lack of initiation is still going to be an issue. Kramer doesn't have flash to look for a pick. See if Kongdoo can play smart around this.
Just have to get that poke in. Quinn getting a lot of damage. Look at the burn from the dragon on that turret.
Wow, that was a lot of damage.
Yeah, a lot of damage, and now this is the final fight here for CJ. Their last stand, bubbling is just going to get kited out and fall. Has to engage straight forward, and it's easy to hit that cocoon, easy to hit that binding under those circumstances. So CJ going to rally around their last turret right now. Roach just powering through it. Kramer trying to kill Crush. He's actually going to pick up the kill, but this should be just a focus fire on the Nexus right now, and that is going to be it. Kongdoo takes the 2nd game of the series and sends us into a 3rd and final deciding match. CJ, just no way to engage.
The Zilean last pick really counted against them. They wanted to have this pseudo Juggernaut comp with Zilean subbing in for the Lulu, but it's everything else Lulu gives the Cogmore that really makes that comp function effectively. This comp didn't, that's the only other way to put it. Kongdoo played pretty well in what was an execution-heavy split push game, but maybe not that much execution required when the answers for CJ just weren't there.
And I like the Zilean if you're diving turrets.
Sure.
And playing aggressively. Zilean in these kiting compositions, he's just so weak for the wave clear and against the siege that came through from Kongdoo Monster.
The first win, and I believe the 4th set, 3 sets I believe without a win, so some pause for CJ fans who certainly were hoping for the 4-5 first half of the round robin. No guarantee, as Kongdoo did look pretty organized there, but I can't see CJ dropping the ball with the draft that badly in game 3.
No. They'll probably pick some better lanes. I think they just powered themselves to an easy win and maybe got a little bit overconfident. We'll see if their draft can change. We did criticize that about Kongdoo in game number 1, and they certainly had a pick ban advantage in game number 2. So they shaped up themselves, and we're going to be heading to that 3rd and final game here in just a few minutes, as we take a look at the Varus, one of the very few Varus games and very few Varus wins this season. We'll be back for game 3 in just a few.